Well, here we are with our special guest, Army Doc here. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a minute. I do say special guest because for me, he's really helped me push my understanding of things, how to address, especially conversations that I may have. And can't wait to see how this one goes because, man, you are insightful, man. A father, a veteran, definitely an activist for local outreach programs. So I just want to put a huge thank out from me. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm an ER physician. I'm an Army veteran. Prior to that, I was in the Navy. I was a Navy corpsman. I was an infantryman. I came into the Army and distinguished myself. Basically, I did something stupid. I survived, and they rewarded me by sending me to medical school. I'm now an ER physician, and I live in Long Island, New York. I work mainly with military veterans. I try to take care of people. I'm a business owner. I do a lot of stuff. I'm an atheist. The flavor of atheist I am is pretty much basic agnostic atheist. I don't assert to know, but I believe that I do not believe. Prior to the military, I got a master's in divinity from Princeton. Played college baseball, yada yada yada. I'm a father. I'm probably, I would describe myself in the last conversation we had as a Trump supporter's worst nightmare. Because
I can imagine.
I'm African American. I'm the type of educated that they hate. I do not believe. I am pretty well off financially. I own my own business, and I'm an atheist. If it wasn't for that atheist part, I'd be their favorite best friend, that black guy that they'd always quote. Hey, this guy believes me, so I can't be racist.
Yeah. So, if you're ready, let's get this ball rolling. My first topic to really bring up is religious indoctrination. Specifically, how throughout history religious sects have used for not only mental control, community control, and how the tools that they use to not only, I guess, obtain new followers of said faith, but also to continue its indoctrination throughout the generation. So my first question is, where throughout your life and studies have you seen this applied?
Okay, first off, let's define what a religion is. All right, theism isn't a religion; it's a belief. It's a belief system. All right, religions are belief systems. They have dogma, doctrine, customs, high holy days, leaders, infrastructure, headquarters, yada yada yada. Right. So when it comes to religious indoctrination, first off, the Jesuits said they basically believed in getting you young, because the thing is, if you read the Bible, if you never read it until you were, say, 27 years old, you'd never buy it. You'd call it horseshit within like 10 freaking pages.
Absolutely.
It's by the time you got to Cain and Abel and found out that they got married, with their mom and dad were the first two humans, you'd be like, where did bonus bitches come from?
Right.
It's like, where'd they come from? Wait. God just created the first man and first woman, and then the moment they leave the Garden of Eden, they're afraid of a town of people? Where'd the town come from?
Right.
It's obvious fiction.
So that brings me a question on that. That brings a question that I have on that. So does it not also say in the scripture that Adam was made outside of the garden and then placed in it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that my studies actually confirm that.
Well, yes. But the thing is, that's not necessarily a problem, mainly because it's indistinguishable from saying magic did. You know what I mean? And when you have God as a magic panacea for everything, It explains nothing, but it can do anything. You know, so of course it can contradict. It can contradict itself. You just later on do a post hoc rationalization and say, well, then you give them some special powers. Same problem we find when you're a comic book fan and you realize that DC basically screwed up its entire pantheon with the freaking, what is it, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and you're like, wait,
yeah,
he's like, Superboy, basically punched a hole in the fabric of reality. Fuck out of here, or
right. In which reality at this point? Because now there's infinite.
It's crazy. So when they have these issues, so basically the religious indoctrination is because religions. This is basically how it is. The difference between a cult and a religion. All right. In a religion, in a cult, you have a charismatic leader where they use the bike model, where they basically have brainwashing, information control, thought control, and emotional manipulation. All right.
A good example of Hitler with the Nazi regime.
On and on and on. Those are cults, right? The thing is, only thing that a religion does is that charismatic leader is dead. That's it. And the thing is, typically what ends up happening is you get to just build on the ghost.
And so during that time, they would have been cult leaders, but then it became a religion once they died and continued worship of the, I guess you could say, prophet or speaker, as opposed to the ethical sense itself.
Exactly. And when large movements, big earth-shattering, world-changing movements take root, once the, very few of them ever hold on to their original thrust, their original plans, their original, intent after the death of that original leader. All right. We saw that after the Civil War. All right. The moment that, Abraham Lincoln was killed, then all of a sudden we had, his successor, what was it? What's his name? Jefferson. What's his name? It'll come to me the moment I'm thinking about it. His vice president, who was a sympathizer to the Confederates because he was a Southerner himself, basically undid everything that Abraham Lincoln had done. Because originally what ended up happening was, Abe Lincoln, he freed the slaves. It wasn't necessarily his intent, but he was willing to do it. He wanted to keep the Union together, and then all the strides, he basically said no 40 acres and a mule. He basically the only people that got reparations instead of the freed slaves, he gave reparations to the Southerners who had lost their slaves. Then he basically made excuses. He helped with the lost cause myth, on and on and on. And he basically
corporate bailout instead of a. Sorry, I was going to say basically corporate bailout instead of taking care of the citizens.
Exactly. So the way that they indoctrinate people is, one, you tell them that the only way through is through me. All right? Because that's the way that you get the tithes. Otherwise, people could basically. It's the same reason why marijuana has been illegal for so long. That's 20, 30 years. You couldn't fill a clown car with the number of people that have been killed by marijuana. All right? But the reason you can't, that they won't do it, even though it has medicinal purposes and on and on and on, and it's not habit forming, it's great for pain management, helps with anxiety, on and on and on, is because there's no Percocet plant, which is why they don't have any problem with that being legal. But if you are basically being priced out of being able to afford your medication, and your medication is, say, indica, you'll just grow your own. That's the reason.
Like say mine, right? As a diabetic, I take insulin. Okay, and when it was first created, it was even patented, so that way it wouldn't be more than like $10 a month for everything that you would need. But once Big Pharma got a hold of it, I'm now paying anywhere between $800 to $1,600 just to stay alive.
Exactly. So when it comes to a lot of this, It's about making sure that there's infrastructure. Then there's the only way through is through me, through us, through our system, and through us specifically. Now there may be different sects because people want to basically branch off, and Amway's not good enough. We're going to do our own little multi-level marketing. That's how you end up with Lutherans and freaking Baptists,
Thousands of different
Unitarians,
denominations of
over
religions.
10,000 different denominations of just Christianity. Of just Catholicism. Everything from Opus Dei to modern reformists, on and on and on. And then you have like another 30,000, if we're really being honest. Some of them would definitely count as terrorist groups. Like this new Baptist one, where they basically want the government to actually have an actual plan where they exterminate gay people. It's crazy. And so that's still another way that they do it. But the thing is, it's even crazier than that. So when it comes to all this stuff, it's really simple. Only way is through me, through us. Then on top of that, they use the Vite model, where, they do all the information control, brainwashing, on and on. This church is nothing but get your weekly dose of brainwashing. It's one person called a preacher who has authority giving a book report. He's doing a very abridged version of the book report, because most of the time when you're dealing with Christians, you spend most of your time as an atheist parsing through the things he thinks in the Bible that aren't there. I'm dead serious. Most of the time, it's like they're giving me Mark Twain freaking quotes as if it was in the Bible, or it's stuff from Shakespeare, or it's Enlightenment philosophical thought. And it's like, no, you're like off by about 1900 to 2,000 years. No, that came much later. It's like, are you insane? And so when it comes to a lot of this stuff, the big issue is dealing with it, because you would never believe it if they didn't get you young as a Jesuit.
And so before we move on to the next pointer here, which is the religious red flags in conversation, I want one more, if you could, go in a little bit more detail on why it's so important for its indoctrination to be preserved, for them to focus so hard on children, specifically between the ages of 5 and 13.
Yes, because prior to that age, you're still in the age of magical thinking. You still believe in Santa, the Easter Bunny, on and on and on. So hearing about this magic man that can do anything is no different than when you were told about Jack Frost, or when you were told about Santa, or any of those sort of things. So, but the thing is, at some point in time, your older 15-year-old brother lets you in on the secret that Santa ain't real. Sorry if I'm not busting anybody's bubble. Santa ain't real.
Right.
All right. And he definitely wouldn't be a white guy, and his suit used to be blue. All right. He was Turkish.
Right.
So, anyway. So when it comes to a lot of the stuff, they want to get you young because, first off, you're impressionable, which is one of the reasons why most of the time when you have a conversation with, especially, born again Christians, their story comes from a place when they were vulnerable. I was an alcoholic, I was a gambler, I was cheating on my spouse. I swear their story sounds like an episode of Cops.
They turn it around and call it testimonies.
And it's their testimony. It's like, why would I want to join a den of thieves? I mean, y'all seem not to be able to get your act together. And George Carlin said, it's kind of weird that your big guy, somehow he always needs money. What is he in? Is he in deep with a bunch of loan sharks? I mean, it's. So the thing is, they want to get you young because, especially, it's no different than the reason why when you get accepted to college, your acceptance letter comes with a bunch of credit card applications too.
Right.
They get a lot more money from you over time if they get you as young as they possibly can. Not to mention they get you deeper. So
I guess
pretty simple, and I know that I boil it down to very simple terms, but when it comes to a lot of this stuff, it's about that simple. Now, there's more detail and nuance as you go into each specific denomination and why they do it, and the particular leaders within each church and each sector and all that type of stuff. But the basics are very universal. They do it, And the reason that it's called tithes is because they get a tenth of your income. It's literally, that's what it means. So
Right.
when it comes to all these things, they want to get you early because they can get you deeper. They want to control your information. It's no different than a cult. They might as well be Scientology. And the only reason that we don't take Scientology honestly, is because we have L. Ron Hubbard's birth certificate. We know that he literally made up the religion because he got tired of being institutionalized because he was crazy. That's why he hates, that's why he hates psychiatrists. And he basically made them the boogeyman within his religion.
Which brings up the next point. Which brings up the next point, man. The religious red flags in conversation. So let's go over that. So I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna have the
Please.
joint creator here to kind of ask us, give some examples of some of her personal, conversations that she's had with, different religious sects. Will bring up information, and how do you while using critical thinking analyze these conversations and address them appropriately. So if you could real quick, Hun, go ahead and give some of those examples, because I know you're really good at them, a lot better than I am.
So, like, one conversation that I definitely have is this was from when I was younger, and it was actually a conversation from Catholicism, from that church, and it was the fact that I had made friends and was going to date a half Mexican, half white person, and how they were telling me that for my soul, it was not okay. And that is a huge red flag, because it's like, why does the color of his skin matter as to why my soul would not be pure? Why would an interracial relationship not be okay, but all certain other things within the Bible are okay?
Well, I get. Thank you for sharing. Well, when it comes to a lot of that stuff, well, we're talking about the Catholic, all right, who has a well-documented history of not just hypocrisy, but outright lying. All right, we were talking about early church leaders. Me and the host, we were talking about this before, and one of the big things was like the early church. You ever heard of Eusebius?
Yeah, I have.
It sounds familiar.
All right, Eusebius was one of the early church scholars. He was literally the one that kept the record. And one of his main orders, his edicts, was that he actually told early church priests, friars, and such to go to their flocks and to exaggerate the stories. Because remember, the reason the Catholic Church kept all of their sermons and even the Bibles themselves written in Latin was because no one spoke or wrote Latin. Most of the people were illiterate, that sort of thing. So when they would say something, there was no ability for anybody to check them. None. They could basically make it mean anything.
Keep your audience illiterate and ignorant.
Yes, information, which means you can have thought control, especially if you get them young. That's the brainwashing. And then you basically make it completely exclusive. All right, because the thing is, it's the same way that you indoctrinate people into the Klan or into white supremacist hate groups. All right, you take a very bland, unaccomplished 18 or 19-year-old disaffected white kid who has maybe had a few dead-end jobs, that doesn't have much going for them. This is the reason why they have a lot of addicts and such that join the church, the born-agains and that sort of thing. And you tell them that something that's immutable, in this particular case, is the soul or their race, in case of these white supremacist groups. And you tell them that that's what makes them special. And then you somehow convince them, because remember, they're not very knowledgeable. You convince them that these people you tell them that they're descended from all these incredible heroic groups, the Vikings, knights, and on and on and on. Groups that lived together and all hated each other and would never tell you that they were the same people. But
Right.
these are the sort of things that they want to believe. So when the same thing happens within religion, it's insidious and it works. And the thing is, it's always worked. It's literally how it's worked here in America when it comes to race relations. Because one of the main ways that you basically got most white, whether they're rich or poor, to agree with your political thrust is, or whatever your political plans were, is to convince them that there's a group that is the root of
And
all
by,
the
and by
problems
extension,
in society.
and so by extension, this is where, government using religion comes in too, because if there's a high amount of a populace that follows, say, for example, like in America, Christianity, a lot of politicians will use that Christian narrative, even if they themselves don't believe in it, to persuade their, followers to say, hey, your religion is what says I'm right.
Yeah, there's only one atheist. There's only one open atheist in our entire federal government. She's she has a very unusual name, Hertzglaw or something like that. Chris something, it's crazy, something like that. It's out of Nevada. All right,
Sweet, I'm gonna have to
she's
look it up.
kind of the only one. She's like the only one. It's out in Nevada or Arizona or something like that. And she won during the midterm, 2018. All right, she did the same thing AOC did. She primaried one of the big Democratic leaders. She's a neo-lib, but it's better than nothing. And so,
Right.
but there's literally nobody in federal government that follows my politics. Shoot, remember, I'm a bleeding heart freaking liberal. I basically believe that, if life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are our motto, then those are the things that we should basically have the government basically care about and really work towards. Life, basically, healthcare is a right. Liberty, equal protection
Especially in
under
this
the
day and
law.
age.
Equal protection under the law, that's liberty. And pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Equality of opportunity. Maybe not outcome, but opportunity. Equity.
It says pursuit of happiness. It doesn't mean the obtaining of it, but the freedom to pursue it.
Yeah, which that's the reason I said equity. It's the equality of opportunity, not outcome, because everybody's got different ability, but and not to mention somebody's got to do every job. And the thing is, the idea that people are going to, that first off, having people at the end of their meal that they should have to do, math that they don't like, and that they should you should allow your customers to decide whether or not your wait staff is going to be able to pay their rent, is just insane. So, but that's America.
So the next question I have for like the religious red flags is, for example, I'll be talking to a Christian and I'll be going over like one of your favorite verses is mine, Exodus 21:1-12, right, where it clearly states how slaves are to be treated, the differentiation between the Hebrew and the non-Hebrew slave, how it is if they gain a wife and what happens, etc. And if they profess that, hey, I will love my master, that master is basically to deafen them, etc. To
drill them all through their earlobe and mark them.
Yep. And
yes,
so
when you're
when you discuss this with religious fanatics when it comes to this stuff, how is it that you can take a step back, listen to the way that they're explaining it, and then register the red flag of, hey, I can already tell the morality standpoint on this, that, hey, owning another person as property is not okay. Secondly, you look at it for it.
Okay, I want to hear the second part. Let me hear the second part.
Okay. And the second part is basically not only registering the red flags, but having the conversation and being able to, in a sense, like I said, conversate not only how is it morally wrong, but how is it morally right to their God in one standpoint, but not morally, but morally okay later. if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. When it comes to a lot of this stuff, and anybody can chime in and tell me if they disagree, but see, most of the time, you're not, in most debates, you're not going to change the mind of whoever you're interlocking. The person you're debating, you're not going to change their mind. It's about the audience, the people that are listening. Because the thing is, they're not being attacked. A way to get around that is something that you may have heard of called street epistemology. Where you ask questions
We
and you
discussed it
lead
before.
them, and you lead them towards what can be the right answer, but you have to stop before the coup de grace. You have to stop before the answer,
Right.
because you have to allow them to sit on it. Otherwise, they will.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, when you call yourself a Christian, when you call yourself a Catholic, call yourself a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, or a Jainist, whatever, you've taken it as your identity. So anything where you take down that religion in any sort of way, or you diminish their God, they take it as personal. You may as well have said something of negative about their mom. You said, that's not the way that they're going to take it. But if you ask questions, and there's questions that they don't necessarily have to answer out loud, but you can let them sit in it, especially when they happen in person, they can take it home. And the thing is, you have to accept that you likely will not be the person who changes their mind. It usually takes a while to find your way out of it. It takes a while. It didn't happen overnight, or nobody does. You can find yourself in religion overnight, but usually it's no different than that's how it happens in a cult. You're at the mall hanging out, and you're at Jamba Juice, and this girl wearing this really cute outfit showing her midriff comes up and gives you attention. You've never had that happen because your name's not Bieber, and she wants you to meet her friend, and you meet her friend, and he introduces you to other friends, and now you're going to this place to see the girl, and while you're there, they're giving you new friends, and you feel like you're doing great, and 5 years later, you've got a shaved head, and you're at the airport clanging a couple of cymbals, begging for money for the temple,
Right.
and that's what happens. And the thing is, what I just described is a cult, but it might as well be being a Hindu, or being a Buddhist, or being, if we're being honest and we're speaking broadly, being a Christian. So it's your identity. There's no scenario where you find yourself in that situation where you don't see yourself. Because remember, God agrees with everything you agree with. He agrees with everything you believe. He thinks everything you think because it's you. So when they talk about those things, they take it very personally. There's no way to get around it. We have to be really honest. So street epistemology, where you ask, take a position. Say the position like you were saying about, maybe you've never even heard about Exodus 21, or how it does about that, or at least you've heard it, but somebody tried to write it off as, no, it's just indentured servitude. It's a debtor's sort of thing.
Right.
No, it's not. It straight up says that. But let me ask you something. Okay, so you're saying it's about paying off debt. The thing is, it says that you can actually pass on these people, as your property to your children. That's not debt. But even if that were debt, okay. But what about the part where he can beat a person and take, as long as it takes more than a day or two for them to die? All right. Remember, this is a time when CSI wasn't a thing. So if it had to have, be close in time between cause and effect for the death, that's the reason for it. They wanted to establish whether or not. And the thing is, the only punishment this is a murder, but somehow if it takes a day or two, if it takes more than 2 days, now all of a sudden it's justified, or at the worst, you have to pay a fine for a murder. How is that moral? And the fine isn't paid to the family. It's paid to the person that owed them, that owned them. Not to mention, this is a thing that's only for Hebrew slaves.
He's already dead.
Because they're completely different for the heathens around you, non-Hebrew slaves. And you don't have to take them. You don't have to let them go in the 7th year, or any time that every 50 years when the year of Jubilee comes around. So it's completely different. You don't have to do that for the heathens around you. That's only for Hebrew slaves. So why the difference? Because we know this not to be moral. And the thing is, if we recognize it's not moral now, then it was never moral. We just weren't aware. No different than we aren't aware about, I don't know what exactly it's like on the planets around Cygnus 12, the star
Right.
Cygnus 12. We kind of have an idea of what they are, how big they are. But we don't know what the climate's like. There could be a humongous storm
Right.
going on right now. We could, but we don't know anything about it. You're just aware of it now.
Right.
And the thing is, just, as long as you're not pointed when you do it, and the thing is, you let them sit on it for a moment, and you ask a very reasonable question. And it normally has to be something that they would be perfectly fine. And sometimes you can do this by asking the question about something unrelated and getting a yes. Because if they are willing to say yes to something unrelated to their religion and possibly mundane, they then, when you ask the question regarding their religion and don't force an answer, they sit on it and they have to, because they're put together. Because the thing is, if you're tying together, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to rewire these thought trees that they have in their head. And in many cases, they never really had any thought trees. It was a thing that they were exposed to, and they just accepted it because there was no competing argument.
Which brings me to the next point of, what I like to call religious survivor's guilt. So like you said, it's easy to get into it almost overnight. You can fall into religion as simply as someone met you and you just wanted friendship or companionship or just to be noticed. But it's when you leave a faith or even when you question it. So as a perfect example, like with my wife here, she was raised Catholic. I was raised non-denominational. My mother and stepfather at the time were obsessed with the supernatural, of demon possession, of all this stuff. I mean, they had me exercised 3 times when I was 9. Among the other things that I've told you about that my stepdad used to do to me, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's when you come away from it, because even if you question it, you risk family, you risk the only community that you risk possibly a job. I mean, especially if your only income was working for the family or friends of the family. And God forbid, you question one thing, you're a heretic, you're the black sheep, you're the person that's going to risk everybody else's souls, so that you're literally ostracized from whatever religion. I mean, it's not just Christianity. You take Islam. I mean, if women don't follow a specific thing, if they are following Sharia law, they're literally stoned publicly to death. So even questioning it could result in the very loss of your life. And then when you actually, even if you do fully get out of it and you're able to separate yourself from it, there's the guilt of not only, like the survivor's guilt of how many of my friends and family that I know that are doing this, that are committing these atrocities with a smile on their face. And I couldn't save them like I had to save myself. But you also have the guilt of how many people did I myself hurt by bringing to it. And the biggest question I have for that is, how do you cope? How do you address not only coming to terms with religion yourself, but life in general? Like, how do you pick yourself up from that?
Well, for me, I have what's called borderline personality. Anybody know what that is?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
From the ID, so I know exactly what it's like.
So for me, I will have a complete 180 if you convince me on the fact. So when it came to the point where I realized consciously I no longer bought the narrative, it was easy. It was completely easy. There was no guilt. There was no anything. It just sucked that other people had an issue with it if they had one. And the thing is, most of those conversations kind of went okay, but I was fine if they didn't. Because I don't suffer. That you like it, but you're getting upset at me because I don't agree with things you're telling me. And usually times It's kind of the same reason that there's a reason that these, like I said about thought, the same sort of thought and neural pathways that allow you to believe in these religious ideas, they completely, basically map over the same ones that can make you conservative. Because you can't, like I was telling you about the rule of 5 deep when it comes to intel work, when you're doing military intelligence briefings. Every single data point that you need to brief someone on, you need to be able to answer at least 5 questions as follow up deep for it. You need to be really, really on top of the intel. Now, there's good and there's bad intel people, but when it came to that, you need to be able to be really well versed. You don't just need to know where the place is. You need to know who used to be there, what their political bent was, why they wanted, what was the crop that was going at the time, was it legal or illegal, how it was in relation to the geopolitical sphere in the area, what wars had gone on, why they went on and on and on. And you need to do this sometimes for hundreds of years in the past.
Right.
All right. And this is for a 15-minute to 1 hour briefing. All right. Of things you're going to say. So you need to be on top of it. So for a 15-minute briefing, I'm going to have about 130 pages that I can be able to reference in a moment. Doesn't need to all be in my head, but I need to at least be versed in it. Anyway, so when it comes to a lot of this stuff regarding their why they were religiously indoctrinated, how they can find the ways out, and how do you deal with the fallout? You have organizations like I was saying, RFRF. Recovering from Religion Foundation. All right. They're an organization that will actually help you find new places in your area. And if you're rural, they have daily or weekly like calls with people that are like-minded or also finding their ways out with counselors and such. They will in some cases they'll put in touch with organizations, everything from atheist, the Atheist Experience or the Atheist Council of Austin or something like that, and, in Texas and different areas that will help you, in some cases, even get an apartment or find a roommate or be able to move, or places in your area. And these will help you build new friend groups so that you can actually get through. Because the thing is, going back to something you don't believe in and pretending will only make you more miserable. Because you may have thought you were happy before, and you may have actually been, but it was mostly out of ignorance. And once the scales are off of your eyes, pretending for the rest of your life will be another prison.
So some good bullet points that you could take away from this is when it first starts happening, do your research. Actually study what it is that they're teaching you, so it's no longer a blind faith of ignorance. And secondly, definitely outreach and research programs that are there for you. Because like you said, you may have no idea that they're even there, but there definitely are outreach programs that are there for you, not just physically, but psychologically, which could also be.
And the most fundamentalist ones could be the most insidious because of that thought control, that information control, you can come out of it with a completely ahistorical world. Right. All right. It'll be like somebody who comes over from North Korea to freaking South. And you didn't realize, oh crap, that never happened. Or wait a minute, that seems crazy. Or it's one of the reasons why a lot of the religious organizations back in the late 70s and early 80s started creating their own university. Many of them aren't even accredited. All right. Because what they found was that their children were going off to college and coming back. These fundamentalist groups realized that their children were going off to college and coming back either not as fervent or actual atheists. That's when the narrative about the socialist, atheist freaking college professors. No, it's just you guys were nuts, and your kids came here and found out that, yeah, we have proven evolution. No, we do have transitional forms. No, that's not how it works. No, that place never existed. No, there is no evidence. There is no, testable evidence to prove that Jesus was a real person. And throughout the entire Bible, it's crazy. But with the hundreds of people spoken of in the Bible, if we're being really honest with the begats, thousands. Of the thousands of people spoken of in the Bible, less than 10 actually exist. And many of them, it's completely mundane stuff. But the ones that matter most, no evidence. There's no historical evidence that Jesus existed. Shoot, the best they
It's
had
not the one
was
that they're describing.
Yeah, the best one that they had for Jesus is from the Testimonium Flavinium from what's his name?
Josephus, was it?
Just from Josephus. But the thing is, he was talking about stories he heard, and the Testimonium Flavinium doesn't make any sense in the text because it'd be like in the middle of a song. Imagine if in the middle of a song you had complete and utter. They just in the middle of a rap song they just started playing the xylophone. That's how out of whack it was. In the middle of a beautiful poem, there's just text for like 3 or 4 lines, and then they go back to the poem. No, it was a later interpolation.
That's like Josephus, like you said. Josephus was born 4 years after the supposed crucifixion, which means by the time he was even literate or even writing anything, he was, at least in his late teens at the very least. And they were all secondhand accounts of other secondhand accounts.
Yeah, secondhand accounts of other secondhand accounts. And the thing is, they were at least 2 average lifetimes after the events. Not to mention, many of the events don't make any sense. I mean, explain this to me. How in the world are you going to tell me that? Okay, how did Moses write about his own death?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. Did he get stabbed and then he wrote it on a parchment in his own blood? If you took away the names and I just gave you a broad strokes of the stories, you call bullshit on almost every story, and the ones that you wouldn't are completely mundane and don't make any sense and don't really matter. I mean, the thing is, Paul said that without Jesus, it was the whole thing in the crucifixion and his resurrection. Without that, all of it doesn't matter, right? But the thing is, that's not true.
Has no value.
It matters. But the thing is, Jesus is prior to the College of Nicaea, prior to the whole thing, Jesus wasn't that big a deal. All right, the ones that mattered were Moses and that sort of stuff. That's the Exodus. There were multiple
messiahs throughout the book as well.
There were multiple messiahs. I mean, the thing is, Jesus. First off, Jesus at the time, Yeshua was like being named Jonathan. It was a common name. All right. So if you have hundreds of supposed messiahs running around at the time, all right, quite a bit of them, when it's a super duper common name, all right, are going to be named Yeshua. All right. But even if it wasn't, these messiahs were all, none of these stories actually happened, or there's no contemporary accounts of them happening. And the thing is, remember, all of this was happening in the middle of the Roman Empire. All of this was happening in the middle of the Roman Empire.
The 2 things I like asking the most are, 1, show me the book of Yeshua written by Yeshua. Secondly, show me any documentation that Lazarus rose from the dead. Yeah.
The thing is, that's actually stolen from a Sumerian text. Okay, this is crazy. All right. The whole idea of El Zurus is actually from the Epic of Gilgamesh. All right. Basically, what happened was stories that were thousands of years older were basically just bastardized and called Christian. It's no different. They basically pulled a Columbus. It's real obvious the moment you realize, oh God, this is the exact same story. Except in Gilgamesh's story, the ark was round. That's it. That's the only difference. The
Instead of being in a
measurements are
snow
wrong.
globe being held up by pillars in the middle of nothing.
Oh yeah, the world and all that other stuff. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Is it on the back of a tortoise too? You know, the
Yeah, it sounds
firmament.
like
That
it
makes no
literally sounded
sense.
like a planet. I had my 8-year-old come up with a story and to describe how the planets would work in the system. And this is before I have yet to teach him actual astrology. But he literally came up almost word for word an almost exact replica of, well, this planet is kind of inside of like a snow globe, right? And like the creator of it kind of sits outside of it and just every once in a while like puts things in it to kind of help their people. And I'm like, you literally just created the Bible, the book of Genesis, dude.
Yeah, and the stories make sense in the time with the knowledge that they had. There's nothing special, nothing that is added to knowledge. We didn't know any of the things. And the thing is, it makes perfect sense that you wouldn't have that stuff because people cannot be ahead of their time. Contrary to what Tony Stark and all that type of stuff want to make you think, all right, Elon Musk is not ahead of his time. He's just putting together
He's
things
right where
that
he's supposed to be.
right where he's supposed to be. All right, he's at the hairy edge because he's one of the richest people on the planet. So that's the reason that those stories came out the way that they did, because they didn't understand any of these things. And most of the stuff that came later are just things that they added. The Bible says absolutely nothing about homosexuality. All right, but fundamentalist Christians, they definitely want to put that in there because they want to make sure that their God hates the same people they hate. That they blame the same people they hate. It's kind of weird that a devout, unabashed racist like Joseph Smith would come up with a religion where the mark of Cain is dark skin.
Right.
Doesn't that make perfect sense? Kind of weird that all of his prophets say that the God hates exactly the people that you hate. That makes absolute sense. And the thing is, when they do this, they do it to a captive audience of people that are policing each other not to question.
Right.
So
we've
completely unremarkable.
Covered that amazingly, man. If you're ready, I'd like to go ahead and enter the Q&A for a little bit, and then end this amazing Discord with a bang. So, are you ready for that?
Yeah, always. No problem. Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna have Mobstem. Go ahead if you could come online real quick, and we'll start with you. So just let us know who you're pertaining that the question to, either me, just say Spaz, or Army Doc, and we'll go from there. Go for it,
man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Yeah. All right. So this is Q&A, right?
Yeah, go for it.
This is Q&A.
Okay.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. This is my first time on Discord. So, but
it's only my second time.
Yeah. So with like the stories of the Bible, like, do you think they could have some sort of like value even if they weren't real? For something?
I think
go first on that one, Doc.
Oh, well, the thing is, when it comes to these stories, yes, I believe they can have value. All right, because you got to remember, most of these organizations, like the Freedom for Religion Foundation and on, and a lot of these different organizations, atheist organizations, they're not saying that you shouldn't teach them as literature. Because remember, most of these stories are parables, and they're meant to tell you about something, some truth, through a story that is easier to understand, like you would tell a child. Something a little bit better than Because I Said So, but not much better,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that would be fine. That would be fine if they weren't trying to assert it as fact, rather than just a fable. But the thing is, they're not willing to do that because they don't get the money if they don't tell me that it's true. Nobody's going to go and give 1/10 of their income to a bunch of storytellers.
Yeah. Like for me,
you get that online. Marvel does it better.
Mm-hmm.
if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and chime in on it too. So I actually highly agree with you on that one, Army Doc. And my adding to it would be, so let's use an example of like the prodigal son, one of my favorite parables in the Bible. Obviously, it's not like a realistic thing that, hey, this person did this, and I just welcome them with their open arms. But if you read it, like he said, as a story or an allegory or a parable to teach a child or someone who doesn't quite get the understanding of the that you're trying to discuss, when a child who wasted his life, and expenses and everything else and came back, he was welcomed with open arms. So this would teach one humility. It is from you worked hard, but simply because someone made mistakes in their life, does that mean that you should punish them for all eternity for it? You should definitely leave an opportunity for them to learn and to grow in that aspect, but you shouldn't, in a sense, ostracize them simply because they took a different life path than you. And as for the father's aspect, it gives you that sense of, a sense of unconditional love, to where you may not, support their habits, but you love them as a person. And so long as they put in the effort to say, hey, look, I was wrong in this situation. I was wrong for, being a thief. I was wrong for this, and I want to grow from it. You should still have that open part of your heart to say, hey, you as a person, I love. I completely disagree with the things that you did. However, you are taking the action to do better, and I can support that action of growth.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree that, I tell people all the time that just because, you can't stand the religion doesn't mean that what's being portrayed isn't informational. I mean, let's take the Lord's Prayer, for example, the original, not the new canonized that was changed at the Council of Nicaea, but the original one not only has, it's not only is it a mantra, so through meditation and stuff like that, by doing certain words or expressions can, help with blood pressure and stuff. But they also found that because a lot of the original Hebrew has both a alphabetical and synonym meaning and a numerical meaning. And so there were a lot of times that religious and governmental people that were over them at the time, they would write in these ways so as that no other religions and stuff like that would quite understand it, but they could also decipher it. So you could say something like, hey, the trees are, green when the wind blows, it does this, blah, 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 in Hebrew. But while saying those things, while most people just look at it as gibberish, you as a Hebrew who could understand the mathematical trying to say that there's going to be attack on this city at this time because of this.
Yeah.
You have to take that step back and look at it and be able to understand with critical thinking and analyzation to understand where it's an allegory for hidden information or if it's like a parable in which to express the understanding of a moral construct.
Yeah, but on top of that, can I add a little something else? When it comes to
Definitely,
that
go.
story, like when you're talking about the prodigal son, it's not that story could just as easily be the story of Geppetto and Pinocchio. All right, it has all of the hallmarks of fiction. So and the thing is, it could just as easily be the cricket and the ant. All right, that old children's story, they're no different. And the thing is, believe it or not, that story about the cricket and the ant is older than the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's one of Aesop's fables. Way older. So they just took it. It's no different than the fact that the movie Avatar is basically Dances with Wolves in space. They just stole. So it's not like, and the thing is, that numerology and such is just taken. You still there?
Still there, Bob Stern?
Yeah.
STEM, I think it is. You got another question? Because we got time for one more for you.
Is there
It sounds to me a lot like, and I don't want to, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to say something.
Yeah.
I kind of get the impression, and I know this is over online, but I kind of get the impression that You're asking a question, which is a valuable question, but are you asking that question to find a reason to just believe it anyway, or to actually get to the truth? I'm not asking you to answer that to me. Just ask yourself. All right? Because you ask, does it have value? And I get that. And you should ask that question, but it should probably be a bit more important if it's true, because it's being asserted as fact. We've probably heard people say, try and tell you, and the thing is, the arguments almost exclusively are you can't prove that it's not true, which is the exact opposite of how you actually get to critical, an actual fact, an actual truth. That's not rational. That's not rational. I don't have to disprove, Bigfoot. You have to prove he's real. North American man ape, hairy ape. Okay, where's that? And so I'm just saying, you might want to ask yourself about that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is there another question that you might have, or can I move on to the next?
Yeah, you can move on to the next.
All right. Well, I hope we answered the. Yeah, definitely appreciate you for being here, man. Much love sent to you. All right, so if you could go ahead and mute real quick, Mops. Oh, go ahead, man.
Where are you out of, man? What state? What state are you out of?
I live in Michigan.
Okay, you be safe.
Okay. Wow, hey, state brother.
Mm-hmm. All right, man.
All right, so if you could go ahead and mute Mobstem, I'm gonna go ahead and let my co-creator jump on here for a second. What's one of your questions that you'd really like to be addressed?
So one of my questions actually has to do with the outreach programs, because and it's kind of with the survivor's guilt thing. So for me, my aspect of survivor's guilt is I had a friend who actually had taken their own life because he was gay, and his parents had pushed that if he just asked for forgiveness, his feelings towards guys would change and stuff like that, and they never changed, and he lost his way because of the faith. And I feel guilty all the time for getting out of Catholicism, and I didn't get out in time to help him. Is there any kind of like outreach programs or anything like that that would work for people with that kind of issue?
Well, I always say is like one of the best ones, like I said, is Recovering from Religion Foundation. The thing is, they can put you in touch with other organizations that are more suited directly to exactly, because, for instance, they have one initiative that they're doing where they're helping a lot of former pastors and preachers and priests that have basically, because basically what ends up happening, and I think this will make sense once I get through it. The all-time biggest reason why people find their way out of religion is learning about their religion. All right? People who actually take a deep dive, sincere study of their scripture, that's how you realize it's forceful.
Right.
Either through the organizations and mostly through the actual scripture themselves, because most of them are internally inconsistent. Like I said about the whole, the Genesis tale about where'd the bonus girls come from? Who'd they marry? So what you're telling me is that, what about the story of Noah? That doesn't make any sense. We know about the actual Iraqi flood, that it was actually that it was a local flood that only raised about 20 inches. And Mount Ararat is less than a mile away, and it's about 3 miles high. It never would have been covered by this local flood. There's records of it. It was a king who just basically had to commandeered a barge and put his farm animals on it for a few days. So when it comes to a lot of this stuff, the ways to find your way out are to go to these organizations and find yourself with, freaking Midwest atheists, different organizations. You can find a lot of stuff online. because you can find online communities. I don't know about you, but I've made many friends that I've never met, but I met them online, and I've known them for years. You know, shoot. I think me and my wife have actually dated people that we never actually ended up meeting, but we met them online. You know,
Right.
and so when it comes to these sort of things, they're no less your friend. They're people that you can still go to, who still have good advice. They can care. You can build actual communities, and you can find one that's way closer to you, especially if you're somewhere close to a major city. You know, or at least not too far from a major city, because they still have events. And that's no different than if you have regular friends, because you don't necessarily see your friends every day. You can probably see them at Christmas and birthdays, and when they have a kid or something like that. So that's no different than getting to see your friends, you know, about like twice a month, maybe once every month. You know, and you probably see the people at these different organizations more than that. You know, one of my favorite people online, one of the ones I really love is Matt Dillahunty. And, you know, I remember he kind of had very much the same situation as me. I started off in the Navy. He and I were both in the Navy. And I saw a lot of parallels between his situation and mine. Everybody in my family thought I was going to end up being a preacher. I'm a preacher's kid, and I'm a preacher's grandkid. You know, I ended up in an Ivy League school, and, you know, everybody thought I was going to be a deep, strong warrior of the faith. And I'm off getting my master's, and I swear, all of a sudden, I'm a freaking dirty heathen. I didn't change. I'm still the same guy. I'm actually a better person than I was then, because I'm more mature, and I can speak from actual experience in life as a father and having, you know, dealt with life and troubles and failures and on and on and on. And the thing is, these situations as they are within these religions are freaking terrible. In what universe would it be makes sense to have emotionally stunted men with absolute authority over children? That's what we do in the priesthood.
Right.
How do you expect any other outcome than what we keep seeing when it comes to like things like Spotlight, what happened recently in, what was it, Pennsylvania? Yeah. What was it, like over 1,000 kids over 70 years? You know, and those.
Oh, it was more than that. The most recent numbers are almost in the tens of thousands.
You know, and the thing is, that was only in a few parishes. That wasn't even all of Pennsylvania. So when it comes to this stuff, man, the organizations you can find mainly online, because they're going to point you towards that anyway. You can start your own journey by going to these different some of the websites, but one of the best ones is the Freedom from Religion Foundation. You know, and,
which brings me real quick to the conclusion.
The Recovering from Religion Foundation is the one where you can find the social stuff. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is the organization that's the legal arm where they're fighting to fight for separation of church and state. So it's Recovering from Religion Foundation.
So yeah, let's go ahead and go right into that conclusion real quick, because like I said earlier, I want that conclusion to be one you giving that shout out to those recommendations. So anyone who decides to listen to this podcast, if need be, can at least have a starting point on where to go. Real quick to all my fans and listeners, absolutely, I'm glad that, you know, if this was able to help you. I hope that you found at least a moment in your life in which you felt accepted, loved, and understood that the world is chaotic and can be quite evil at times, but you're not alone. And my last statement before you go along and give us that list, I would like to say to those who believe in a faith, you know, may whatever deity you worship, you know, bring you peace and understanding. And if you don't, may the odds forever be in your favor. So, go ahead, man.
Really? Hunger Games?
I had to, man. I had to, especially with the way society's going today.
And you quote Effie?
Couldn't help it, man. I couldn't help it. So, but yeah, man, if you could go ahead and give us those lists real quick, and
Okay.
like again, thank you so much for your participation in this. It definitely not only warmed my heart, but your conversation every single time we have one really pushes my understanding and how to approach things and to make me a better man, itself. So I wanted to give you, a huge thank you for that.
That is a lot of polish to put on a turd like me, but okay. Um, one of the organizations I work with several of them out here. There is Boots on the Ground here in Long Island, New York. They help military veterans to help transition. They give them a lot. We do a lot of things regarding Christmas gifts, Halloween stuff, things that they need for their home, furniture. We do a whole lot for them. Then there's also an organization called Project Nine Line. It's run by a guy that I was 101st Airborne with, called Patrick Donahue. They are amazing. I've done
Was
everything
that
from
not?
their
Say that again. You said Project what?
Project Nine, like the number. Project Nine Line. Nine Line Medevac is what you do in order to remove a casualty from the battleground.
Okay, so they're basically they're search
Helping
and
people
recovery, basically.
out of their problems.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is in the military. But Project Nine Line is a charity that actually does things like teaching job skills,
Sweet.
teaching. They have they teach music. They have support groups. They have a veterans comedy group that actually teaches veterans those sort of things. And my phone is about to die. I'm down to about 2%. Let me get over
Okay.
here because I don't want to die on you. And the thing is, all real charity and help happens at a local level. Politics, all the type of stuff, because you can really affect change to real people in very targeted ways, which is what you need on a local level. So that is exactly how you do it. And the way that you do it is you simply look for those. You can find them in searches for help.
He might have died right there. So you got. Let me re-go over it again. One of the ones he mentioned was Boots on the Ground and Project Nine Line. Definitely give them a check out, a shout. Also, don't forget to. I believe it was FOF. If he can't specifically help you with what you need, they can at least direct you to where those resources are. I just wanted to say thank you yet again to all my viewers, and may you be blessed in all things that you do. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.